Welcome back to Trust the Profits YouTube page, and this is Doubling Down.
Or maybe it's capping the card. Late pick 5 at Aqueduct coming up. Salutations and welcome, horse racing fans. My name is Matthew DeSantis, and I am joined by my good friend here on Trust the Profits, Colin Sheehan. Colin, thank you so much for joining me on this perhaps joint episode, as we teased in the beginning, of a little bit more than doubling down, a little bit less than capping the card, but there is a fantastic late pick 5 carryover taking place on Thursday, January 5th at Aqueduct, $189,000 carryover from this past weekend. And so we're going to be doing the late pick 5 sequence. That's races 4 through 8. So it's not quite capping the card because we miss out on races 1, 2, and 3, but it's a little bit more than you usually do on a weekly basis of doubling down. So thanks for helping me out with this. And just what are your initial thoughts about this sequence as you handicapped it, as you tried to put together a card? What were your kind of initial thoughts on this if people are playing it?
My first thoughts are that I do my doubles so that I don't have to delve into the pick 5. So we're touching in some waters here that are very hot for me. I tried to consider it a doubling down sandwich where you got to hit the first 2 legs and then the last 2 legs, and then you got a little something in the middle. So we'll see how that strategy works out for me. But in trying to do that, I'll tell you, I was pulling my hair out. And I told you before we started taping this, I went through the card the first time and I didn't like anybody. I'm like, toss, 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 toss. I don't like this. So this is going to be really hard to figure out.
It's a $5 ticket you got going on here.
Then the odds come out, and you go back and you look through it again as we're prepping for the show. And I'm like, well, I can't leave this horse off. Can't leave this horse off. I like this horse. And suddenly I'm like, okay, now what do I do? I don't like using chalk, and I got, 2 pretty chalky singles in here. So we'll see. I'm excited to hear what you think about this card, but I know that we both agreed through our messages that it's a tricky sequence, and with $189,000 carryover, that bodes well if you can find your way to the winners.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you. It is a tricky sequence. It both starts and ends with a maiden claiming race. And so you're kind of spreading on the ends of the sequence. I think in the middle is where you can go a little skinny. You mentioned going single. We're going to share our tickets here in a minute. We both went single in at least 1 race. You went singles in 2 races, but I think it is a tricky sequence to make your way through. I think those maiden claimers make it particularly challenging, but those middle allowance and optional claiming races are a little bit challenging as well. So we will both provide you with our ticket. And one of the things Colin and I wanted to do was we wanted to keep this economical. We wanted to make sure that people aren't going to break the bank playing this ticket. And maybe you just use this suggestion as a base ticket. And if you have a larger budget, you can add on to it if you'd like. But we both kept our tickets under $50. So this way it's, I think, a pretty, quote unquote working man's ticket. And Colin just popped it up there on the screen. So you can see my ticket's a little bit more expensive at $48. Colin went with singles in 2 races. His is at $30. But Colin, let's dive into the very first race. And this is race 4 on the card. And it's a $20,000 maiden claimer that is 1 mile for 3-year-olds. And you went 5 deep in this first one, if I'm not mistaken. We both have the 2, the 6, and the 8. So why don't you talk a little bit about those 3 horses and what attracted you to them?
So tricky race with this maiden claimer. That's kind of where, as they say, as we're talking to new handicappers, that's the bottom rung in horse racing. It's the worst of the worst, if you will. And all figs that these horses have raced going by Brisnet are well below the par. So they give you a par speed figure of an 81, and then you can go through and kind of look at what the horses have done in the past to see if they can try to repeat that, which I don't think any of these horses will. And then the next thing I like to look at is which horses are dropping down from a maiden special weight to maiden claiming. So for people that are new, maiden special weight, horses can't be claimed out of those races. It usually tends to think that the owners think that this horse has some future. So when you see them dropping down to maiden claim, that's considered one of the biggest drops in horse racing. And the only horse in here that is dropping from a maiden special weight is this number 2, Dromoland. I watched the replay of this last race, or the only race that this horse ran in, bumped really hard at the break, and this horse this horse did not want to run. I mean, everything this horse was doing was like, oh my God, I felt so bad for Kendrick Carmouche
Yeah,
to try and keep this horse in control. But I'm playing that angle of it's the second time. You hope that the horse has shown
sure.
maturity, maybe learned from the first time. Has had a couple works in December, not as many as you'd like to see, but I'm really playing that maiden special weight drop down
Yeah.
on 2, which I assume is why you are as well.
Yeah, no, the two, I think, just to give people some sense, Dromo Land, the two is at 5-1 on the morning line. Now, everything Colin just said is true, and that should tell you the quality of this field, that the number 2 is 5-1. This is a horse that was beaten, if I'm not mistaken, by 46 lengths in debut. So there's not a lot to work with in this particular field. Yeah, the drop down was certainly one. And this was also a horse that sold for $300,000 at the Saratoga August sales. So there was some expectation here. One of the guests I had on the Win Play show a couple weeks ago, Jessica Tugwell, really likes Accelerate progeny and offspring. And this is a progeny of Accelerate. And so I was kind of playing a lot of the same angles, first time Lasix, first time gelded, and you're also seeing that drop down in class. So definitely like the 2 for that reason. I know we both like the 6 as well. That's a horse that I think, Basic Truth at 9-2 on the morning line. This is a horse that flashed some early speed, which I think is a good sign in a debut. Obviously faded after that, but the fact that you could, like I said, show a little bit of speed early, I think is a lot. And when you go back and watch the replay of this one and the head on, this horse was bumped pretty hard at the break. And I'll be honest, there were horses all over the track in this race. When you watch the head on, everybody was just kind of out of control. And that you just uses up a lot of energy on horses. Imagine just running without any real form. You're just flailing around, running. You're going to expend more energy than somebody who's just running with a very tight form, a runner's form. And so it's the same sort of thing with horses, that they were just gangly and green and just running all over the place, wears them out. So I think second time is going to be beneficial there. Slight drop down as well, from a maiden 30 last time to a maiden 20. So you are dropping a little bit there. Some nice works coming out of this one as well. So 9-2, I thought decent value. And then we also both, if I'm not mistaken, we both also like the 8 as well. And so what attracted you to that horse?
I don't know how bad he is. The number 8, Danny's a Cowboys, a first-time starter by Big Brown, who hits at 10% on the first-time starters. That's really the only angle I have is the only horse that I don't know how bad this horse is. And so if I'm going to be using 2 singles, the horse is 12-1 morning line. I like to throw in those first-time starters when they're the only one against a field of I'll be nice and say nothing too special.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, something, there is a little mistake on the sequence I just realized. So I like the 10 in this one, not the 8. And so I am 2, 5, 6, 10. And I know we both do like the 10 in here as well, which is second in read, which is the morning line favorite at 7-2, getting Lasix for the first time. This is really the only horse that's shown run, quite frankly, in this field. That this is a horse that's at least posted some decent buyer speed figures. I mean, everybody else is in the 20s or the teens or lower than that. This horse at least has posted a 37 and 32 buyer speed figure the last 2 times out. I do think going a mile is beneficial. This horse actually had his best placement going a mile at Aqueduct when it was the Belmont meet in a maiden 40. There's also a horse that's dropping down in class a little bit, going from a maiden 75,000 last time out to a maiden 20, I should say, this time. So dropping quite a bit within that maiden claiming class. So I think there's certainly something there. I guess the outside post position going this 1-turn mile should be able to slot in wherever this horse wants. And also, this is a horse that, you'll see in some of these running lines, a lot of these horses just end up getting blown out by 10, 15 lengths. This is a horse that at least keeps on and has decent late speed. So if some of the horses are fatiguing, this is a horse you would imagine is going to be picking up some pieces.
Yeah, and the only other horse that we didn't talk about, who I actually really like almost the most, is number 4, Charlie's Medal.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that I like this horse, although it's coming from Finger Lakes and Penn, it's the only horse to show some closing kick in the last race.
Hmm.
And so it's another angle when, I'm kind of combining all the angles of what I like to look for in a main claimer. You just happen to have the angles spread across so many different horses. So that is why I decided to use the 4 as well, because of showing a little bit of close. I think I updated the ticket for you there. We
Oh,
exchanged
perfect.
the
Thank you very much.
8 for the 10.
Yeah, no, that is that. Thank you for doing that, Colin. I appreciate that. And so, yeah, I mean, I think the big thing to take out of this is there is not a strong, overwhelming horse to use in this particular sequence. If in the first leg, I definitely encourage people to spread. If you think you can find a single, or if you like 2 horses that you think you can narrow down, good for you. But I'm going 4 deep. Colin's going 5 deep here, and I think understandably so. Well, let's head to the second leg, which is race 5. Is an $82,000 claimer. That is an unusual distance, a mile and 3/16, and it's for 4-year-olds and up. Colin, you singled a horse that I also am using, the 7 Tonal Impact for Linda Rice. Why don't you talk a little bit about Tonal Impact and what made you single this horse in this particular race?
Yeah, I went back and forth between including the 2 bold victory on my ticket. When we had
Yeah.
exchanged texts on whatever day, a couple days ago, we had talked about the weather maybe being a little messy in Aqueduct this week, a lot of rain. I checked before we taped this show. It's Tuesday. I think I always have to think for a second these days, especially with all the holidays. You're like, is it what year is it? What month is it? And what day is it? It's Tuesday when we're taping this for Thursday, but the number 2 bold victory on 6 off tracks had 2 wins, 3 seconds, and a third. So the 2 and the 7 where I was going back and forth. Then the morning line came out. I saw that the 7 was 7-5. This horse also has 2 wins over and off track. And
Hmm.
last I checked, the rain only looks to be hitting tomorrow, Wednesday.
Yeah.
And Thursday seems to be a little bit clearer now. So I don't think it's going to be as, messy as we may have originally
Yeah.
thought. But this horse, Tonal Impact, is a really strong closer, and he's also won 4 races in a row. 2 for 3 on the off track, as I mentioned, and Linda Rice and Kendrick Carmouche have been your top jockey and trainer at Aqueduct recently. So you have that trainer angle. The speed figures are definitely there. The last 4 using Brisnet have just been continual to improve. I do all my handicapping. Then I like to kind of check equine edge if I'm doing a
Hmm.
pick 5 to see if I'm way off in what I'm thinking. Equine edge had this horse as a 43% winner, by far the highest of this whole sequence.
Hmm.
So that also led me to want to single Tonal Impact. My fear is, can this horse repeat the last effort? And also, this horse had been running with claiming company.
Right.
Not Nothing that really instills the most confidence in me when you look at someone like the 5 Royal Trice, who's been with Allowance Company, the 4, who you obviously like and does scare me because it's Pletcher. So if you want to mention Gasoline and why I might
Yeah.
be in trouble on that horse.
Well, I also like the 7. I'm including the 7 on my ticket as well. And you're right that this horse has been running and claiming, and then the last time out, Starter Allowance Company. So he's taking a little bit of a step up. What I will say is I was very impressed by that late kick. That last time out, going from 8th and like 4 or 5 lengths back to winning by 4 or 5 lengths clear. And that was going a mile and an eighth. So you're only adding another half furlong. This horse should absolutely like that extra distance. I do think the 7 makes a lot of sense. The 4 is a Pletcher. It's second back from a layoff. The distance, I don't think, will be an issue. This is a horse that actually has run a little bit better the more it's gotten stretched out. It's ran against good maiden company. Going back, looking at some of those maiden races this horse ran against, a horse like Artorias, horse like Win It, horse like Warrior Johnny. These were good horses. These are good horses. So he was running against really good maiden special weight competition and running consistent buyer speed figures, going a mile and then stretched out to a mile and eighth at Saratoga, broke his maiden, and then goes and runs a mile and an eighth at a pretty high level allowance race, finishes third in that race to a next out winner, Unbridled Bomber, but then goes to the bench for a little bit, comes back and finishes sixth. But I think that was a race just to kind of get some form back, to get a little bit of energy back into the horse. And the reason I kind of like to include both the 4 and the 7 is the 4's got early speed and should be well positioned up on the lead and might just be able to kind of wire the field. And we see that sometimes in these distance races. And the 7 is your closer. And so I figured I'm going to protect myself. If it's going to be wiring the field, I got the 4. And if it's going to be coming off the pace, I got the 7. That's why I went 4-7 there, but certainly can't argue with singling the 7, something I really did strongly consider doing here. Well, let's move to the third leg where we are in agreement. And this is a $72,000 allowance. That is a mile and an eighth for 4-year-olds and up. It is a state restricted race. And we both are singling in this one on the double entry of the 1 and 1A. But I think it's the 1 simply that is really the horse that interests us here. I'm playing this from a Rob Atras angle. That barn has been firing really effectively off the claim, second off the claim, really strong statistics. He's been sending out a ton of winners up there in New York. So Atras, when I saw an Atras horse at even odds, 1-1, we should mention on the morning line, I thought this is a horse you kind of have to single because I didn't see a lot of ways to get around this one. So I'm interested in how you saw and approached singling in this particular race.
I wasn't as confident in this single as I was in as with Total Impact, especially where the odds on this horse are worse than what they were on
Right.
Total Impact. This horse is even money, and at least I'm getting 7-5
Yeah.
in the previous leg. So I really took a hard look at, did I want to do this? I was really liked Mason Mania, the number 2, who the reason I ended up kind of deciding to go with the 1 was I went back and watched the replay of the last race that Simply ran in, where you also had Mason Mania. You had the 4 Royal Suspect run in that race, and the 8 Dr. Marbouze. They all came out of that same race. That race was run at a mile. This one's going at a mile and an eighth, and Simply was simply the best in that race and was pulling away.
Yeah.
You'll see some the running line here on the 2 Mason Mania says rough start, and I agree with that. He did have a rough start. But Simply was dropped back and was right next to him. So,
Yeah.
you know, although it was a rough start, they were in the same spot. And yeah, it may have thrown Mason Mania off, but from the jump, Simply sat back, as you see, was 9th place at the first call, and then really made a pretty big move up to second, and then ended up finishing second in that race. Didn't run away with it, but compared to the other horses that are in this race, that's kind of where I decided to go with the 1. The 3 I just crossed off, coming from a claiming $40,000 race. We lost by 27 lengths and tired. That was at a mile, so it was hard to argue that he's going to do better. The 4 was interesting to me, Royal Suspect. I did highlight the fact that this horse liked the off track with 3 wins, 3 seconds, and we had talked about maybe if it's a little muddy. Also had been running in basically the same level, 2 races here at Aqueduct. This 2 back, he finished 5th in that previously mentioned race. I like to go through and cut out when you see a horse that's run on the turf versus the dirt, which is what this 5 Cagney's done.
Yeah.
When you just highlight those dirt races, nothing too spectacular for me. I guess the 7 maybe was the one that I had some interest in, but this was a big class jump.
Yeah.
And this horse always seems to regress. So it has a good race and then kind of takes a step back. Has a good race, kind of takes a step back. He had a good race December 9th. And I'm just kind of playing that angle that maybe he's going to step back again, especially with the class jump.
Yeah, I think you and I saw this one the same way. I was really looking for a reason to get beyond the 1A here, and particularly the 1. One of the things I like to look at in these state restricted races is have horses run against open company and had success against open company. Not really in this field. I mean, most everybody's been running in these state restricted races. Some are even running in these state restricted claiming races. So, there wasn't an obvious choice of like, oh, this is an open company race. Or when you do see open company races in certain horses running lines, they're up at Finger Lakes. And it's like, okay, well, that's one that running open company at Finger Lakes is not the same as running state restricted, even at Aqueduct. And so that's something I think to keep in mind for people looking at this sequence.
Yeah, and that's the 8 Dr. Marbouze I assume you're referring to. And he was actually the one that I was going back and forth with doing a 1-8 on this race because I saw that close, the closing kick that this horse had in the last 4 races. And so if Dr. Marbouze beats me, he'll be the one that he's kind of one of those ones when I decided I needed to single.
Yeah.
I will be kicking myself if the 8's the one that beats me.
Yeah, I did take a long look at the 2 as well. Mason Mania. I of course work at George Mason University, so Mason, I gotta put in a little plug there. So, but definitely was looking. Exactly, definitely had to take a look at that. But ultimately, that, like you said, that 7 length defeat and gap between Simply and Mason Mania last time was just like, I was like, I don't know if this is, because you're right. I mean, they were basically both at the same spot early. And it's like, how is this next race going to play out any different? And, I knew I needed a single in one of these sequences at least. So I chose to do that here. Well, let's move to the fourth of the 5 legs. And this is going to be race 7, which is an $80,000 optional claimer that's 7 furlongs for 4-year-olds and up for filly and mares. And here we both like the 1 and the 2, and then we both went 3 deep in this leg. But why don't you talk a little bit about the 1, Secret Love, if I'm not mistaken? What attracted you to this horse? 5-2 in the morning line, I should mention.
So there's a lot of speed in this race is the first thing that I noticed when I went through and
Mhm.
kind of did a little bit of, okay, where's my pace handicapping at? Um, and so thinking of that, I want a horse that is going to be able to stalk a little bit. And Secret Love has shown that ability, especially last out. The other thing I liked about Secret Ability was I went through and compared who these horses have been racing against, because you got an optional claimer for
Mhm.
80,000 non-winners of 3 with a whole bunch of conditions attached to it, right?
Of course.
7 Piece My Heart, and it's always a mind trick to try and figure out why is this horse here, right?
Mhm.
But the 7 Piece of My Heart with the Linda Rice barn, who I immediately noticed lost to Goodnight Olive 4 back.
Yeah,
And you're going to talk, you do have the 7 on your ticket, but the reason
I
I
do.
don't have the 7 on my ticket is it because of how many times it's been racing at this same level.
Mhm.
And that's what ended up making me kind of look elsewhere for, okay, which horses are maybe coming into this level from stakes or graded stakes races. And that's how I ended up on my 3 choices.
Yeah.
The 1, 2, and the 4. You can sound the horn because my brother's name is Corey. I picked this horse. My brother's birthday is April 10th. The first time I saw that this horse was actually, I recognized this horse was on April 23rd when he won at 14-1, and I threw $10 on him to win. So
I
uh,
love it.
I didn't really see all these other times he's won. So I'm glad I didn't, because I would have had a lot of losses. But this is the pace play for me, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
I immediately like, oh, I can't let Corey beat me, and I feel like number 4 always knocks me off my ticket. But there's an angle here, and that is that there's a ton of early speed, and I
Mhm.
only saw Corey as your real, at least by Brisnet, it's a P3. You're really
Mhm.
only closer late, and horse has been running in stakes races, the Pumpkin Pie, a grade 2, a couple back.
Mhm.
Um, so that is where I ended up on the 1, 2, and 4. Was that my angle was basically where have these horses been running at from a class
Yeah.
standpoint.
Yeah, and I'll just talk a little bit about the 2. I agree with you about the 1, and the 4 was a horse I strongly considered as well. The 2, Easy to Bless, 6-1 on the morning line. This is a horse that's second back from a pretty significant layoff. Went from June 10th till December 11th, so about a 6-month layoff there. And this is a horse that had run in the Grade 2 Bed of Roses, run against Bella Sophia and Obligatory. I mean, run against big time company, and had been really showing a lot of progression prior to that race. Something clearly went wrong. The horse, lost by 19 lengths that day, then comes back, runs in a 25,000 to starter allowance, clearly just trying to get its legs under it as well. This is also a little bit of a condition play in terms of if there's moisture in the track, this is a horse that very much so likes wet conditions. 4 wins and 7 career starts on an off track with 2 second places, so 6 for 7 times in the exacta. That's hard to argue with when you're looking at this. So I think this horse's best efforts from a buyer speed figure standpoint can absolutely win. This horse has won a listed stakes race before, so has won at 7 furlongs, which we should mention is. We've talked about this on Doubling Down, a little bit of an unusual distance, so I definitely took that into consideration. The 7 for me was a little bit of using maybe a little bit of a defensive use. But this was a horse that's finished second the last 3 times out. Maybe this horse just has seconditis. But I also thought from a pace standpoint, this horse has actually some of the stronger late pace projection speed figures in the field from a time form standpoint. So I thought if their pace does break down a little bit, this horse should be well positioned to capitalize on it. And so I ultimately went 1-2-7. You went 1-2-4. But let's head to the last race. And if we're both alive in this last race, happy days, because we both decided to spread pretty much in this last one, both going 4 deep in this last leg, which is a $25,000 maiden claimer, 6 furlongs for 4-year-old and up, filly and mares, and it is a state restricted maiden claiming race on top of that. So you talk about kind of the tiers. There's maiden claiming, and then there's state restricted maiden claiming that's below that. So this is really about as low as you're going to get, and that's no shots at New York breds who have really improved a lot over the last decade or two. But it's still, nevertheless, this is a really, you look at this race, there's not a lot in here, and there's a lot of ways, I think, to go. Where did you go in this one, Colin?
I like the 5. Try It Again.
Mm-hmm.
Mike out of the Michael Mako barn with Jose Lezcano. This is a horse that is dropping down from maiden special weight. Had tried, it was state bred, but 85K, then 75K. If you take a look at that last race, which was actually in September of 21, the winner was Vente Valentine. Second place was Let Her Inspire You, and third was Silver Fast, I believe.
Yeah. And here's the amazing part. That race featured 4 next out winners. Actually 5 overall. Venti Valentine and 4 other next out winners from that one maiden special weight race. And that was a loaded race you could look back at.
So I don't know how does a loaded race look 2 years later when the horse hasn't raced.
Exactly. But I was like, hey, at least this horse, I mean, it shows that the company that this horse at least was keeping prior to the layoff. I also really like this horse a lot.
Yeah, and then so what stood out to me beyond that was the workouts.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the other workouts, they're not great, but this horse did minute flat for 5 furlongs, been running at 5 furlongs basically every 8 to 10 days, which is something 7 to 10 days, which is something I like to see. And if you go back to November, this horse was putting up 48 second 4 furlong workouts.
Yep.
I almost considered just going 5 and the 7 on this last leg. I felt really comfortable about this 5, but as you said, it's it's the best of the best. And so I continued looking, and you'll notice that my ticket really plays that angle on the maiden special weights dropping down.
Yep.
That's also why I like the 7 at 12 to 1. Blinkers go back on. This is second off the layoff, so I'm hoping for an improvement. I really would like to see some sort of early speed out of a horse. This horse showed, at least at this level, these horses can get in the lead. They all just quit because they're like, oh, I know how this story ends, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Very much.
And so this horse, at least in its debut, broke pretty sharply and showed speed for 1 call of his entire 3 race career so far. And so that horse was also bobbled, had some trouble steadying the last 2 races. So 5 and 7 were kind of the 2 that I had pegged on top. And then we both liked the 9, it looks like. Chiara.
Yep. Chiara, who's the morning line favorite at 5 to 2. And this horse, last time out, it's interesting. This is a horse that had been running on the turf, then takes a little bit of a break, goes on the dirt, and posts by far and away the best speed figure of its career, going 56 from a buyer speed figure standpoint. So really saw this horse improve dramatically. And she posts, a second place finish by 3 lengths. The horse, Big Bean Christine, who won that race, goes and wins next time out. So, there's certainly something like there. And at this distance, at 6 furlongs, getting that far outside post is something I always like. This is, the jockey should be able to kind of survey the field, see where to slot in. This horse has, enough tactical speed to be able to, I think I have a pretty good trip all the way around. So hard to leave this one off. I will also mention the 3, which is a horse that I like and I included on my ticket, Franny Lou at 8 to 1. This is a horse that is dropping down pretty significantly in class from a state restricted maiden special weight, $70,000 to a maiden claimer. This also is a horse that ran first time out on debut on a sloppy sealed track. Now we talked, there might be some moisture, but it's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be a sealed track. It might just be a good track. Might be a little bit off, but not that far off, but willing to obviously make a concession there. This is also a horse getting blinkers on. So you'd imagine this horse is going to show a little bit more early speed than it did in debut. This is a pretty significant class drop going from that maiden 70 down, or maiden special weight 70 to a maiden claiming 25. So I thought, 8 to 1, if this horse is able to pull that off, get a little bit of value in this one. And then the other horse that I was interested in was the 8, Banana Nana Foe at 4 to 1 on the morning line. This horse has shown, it's interesting. This is a horse that has been running a lot, probably the most experienced horse in the field, 12 career efforts. This is a horse that does seem like it's become a little bit of a different horse since it came back from a pretty long layoff. It went from January 8th of this past year to October 24th. So almost a 10-month layoff. And now that it has come back, it's been running high 40s, low 50s Beyer speed figures, much more competitive, 2/3 and a second, by far and away the best placements of this horse's career, and has been running around this level and not being that far off the lead either. So I just thought this is a horse at 4-1. Maybe this horse finally breaks through, is getting the blinkers on, so should be a little bit more forwardly placed. Maybe that's all it takes to get this horse over the hump. But you also like the 2 in this particular race, who I don't think we've touched on yet.
Yeah, and I like the 2 for all the reasons you mentioned of the 9. So this 2 had been running on the turf.
Yeah.
Started off 4 times on the turf. Was actually running fairly decently.
Yeah.
3 back on the turf. Showed a lot of early speed before getting tired. That's unfortunately what this horse likes to do, is get tired. However, he tried the dirt and kept up for the most part until the stretch, when he dropped back. But that horse that won that race came back to win as well. So kind of similar very much to what you said about the 9. However, I also like the jockey on the 2 more than I like the jockey on the 9. Herman Harkey, man, that guy just never wins for me. So I'll take my shots with Kendrick Carmouche on this 2 as well.
Yeah, Mark Henning and Carmouche, the trainer jockey combination, winning at a 24% clip early on at Aqueduct with a 410 ROI. So hard to argue with those statistics. But the way we see it is I go 4 deep in the first leg, 2 deep in the second leg, singling in the third, then 3 deep, then 4 deep for a $48 ticket. Colin goes 5 deep in the first leg, single, 3 deep, 4 deep for a $30 ticket. So obviously we had a fair amount of overlap. I think we both obviously have a single in common. The other single that you play, I'm also including on my ticket. So I think that middle sequence, if people are playing this, even if you don't necessarily agree with all of our picks, that middle sequence, races 6, 7, 5, 6, 7, maybe 6, 7, or 5, 6, that's where you really want to get as compressed as possible, because 4 and 8, I just feel like are wide open. And that's going to draw, it's going to make the price of your ticket go up. But if you can find a single in that 5, 6, 7 sequence that you really like, and maybe you look at that, we both went 1, 2, and then added another horse in race 7. But if somebody goes, listen, I'm just going to go 1, 2 here, obviously that can save a little bit of money as well. So try to give you some economical tickets here. Colin, are you excited about playing this one?
I will play it. I will absolutely play it, because I'm not going to put all this time in and put it out and then not play it. So I know people give crap to the TVG guys because they say they don't play the picks, but we play our picks here.
We do.
That's why we also keep them in what is manageable budgets, right? And I did approach this like I would my daily double show to start. And when I decided I'm going to single tonal impact, you then look at the prices in the first leg, and so on and so forth is how I approached it. And that's why I think I came out, the $30 range is I think with 2 singles that are chalk, probably where you want to be. I wouldn't want to be up in the $80, $90, $100 range with 2, even money and 7 to 5s on my ticket. If you're going to do something like that, you could take out the 7 and the 1 in those single legs and go deep,
right.
And that's where you're going to get a more expensive ticket, but you're also going to make a lot more money, because I think a lot of people in the general public are probably going a little bit along the same lines as at least me in those second and third leg, and that's what makes me a little bit nervous, because you do want to try to be different, right? In some of these tickets, but that's why I do doubling down and not whatever we're calling this show.
Well, this is we obviously wish everybody good luck on this late pick 5 sequence at Aqueduct. Again, this is for the late pick 5 on Thursday, $189,000 carryover. So there's going to be a significant pot for that pick 5 starting on race 4, going through race 4 and race 8. Make sure to subscribe to Trust the Profits for all of our content. Colin, do you know where you're going this week on Daily Doubles yet or not?
I don't. I got to find a guest that can win. So Matt came on, and
Yeah,
there's a
it
guest
didn't work
curse.
out well.
There's a
Yeah,
guest curse. I did hit my daily double this week
you did.
for
Yeah,
$40.
yeah.
Vinny has says I can't be in last place any longer. So I do believe Vinny is our guest,
All
and
right.
we got to take a look and see what we have this weekend. We usually try to follow where you're going. So do you know where
Yeah.
you're going?
I'm going to Santa Anita this weekend,
Okay.
and I'm going to have Josh Rodriguez from On the Wrong Lead as my guest, and we're going to go through capping the card together there. But we obviously also make sure to check out Colin's Derby news updates that are coming out this week. Smarty Jones, we might as well just give Brad Cox the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness, and the Belmont with all the freakish 2-year-olds, now 3-year-olds that he's got in his barn.
We haven't
But
even seen logins yet.
exactly. Everybody's favorite on the Trust the Profits. That might be the official Trust the Profit source. It's logins. But make sure to check out all Colin's stuff. I have the Win Play show dropping on Wednesday as well. So I have a lot of stuff for you here on Trust the Profits. Make sure to follow both of us on Twitter. And until next time, friends, my name is Matthew DeSantis. That's Colin Sheehan. We are wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races and reminding you that it's now post time.